was young and innocent, but treated like a maid. Nkechi, a 20-year-old Igbo girl, known for her light skin and kind heart, she lived with her aunt, Ogechi, and her two spoiled cousins, Chichi and Chineye, who were 23 and 24 years old. Nkechi's life was full of hardship. Ever since she lost her parents, she had been treated like a servant in her aunt's house. Ogechi's daughters never did any chores. They were always dressed in fine clothes, painted their faces with makeup, and sought attention from the village men. But Nkechi, who wore patched clothes and slept in the kitchen on a mat and used the rags as pillows, did all the house chores. Ogechi would hit Nkechi for the slightest mistake, and even when Chichi and Chineye made terrible mistake, they would blame it all on Nkechi. Nkechi literally did everything, from fetching water from the stream, sweeping the large compound, taking care of the farm, washing the dishes, washing all their clothes. She ate leftovers, and every day she dreamt of escaping, but had nowhere to go. One fateful day, Chineye stole 10,000 naira from her mother's purse to buy a Valentine's gift for her boyfriend. When Ogechi realized the money was missing, she asked her daughters, but they both denied it. "Mother, how dare you accuse me?" Chichi shouted. "You know who the thief is." She sneered. At that moment, Nkechi just returned from the stream with a calabash of water on her head. Without explanation, Ogechi slapped her harshly. "Why did you steal my money?" she demanded. Nkechi, shocked, stood there with tears in her eyes. "I would never steal your money," she said bitterly. Ogechi, angered by her defiance, snapped, "You will not eat tonight unless you give me that money." Her cousins laughed as Nkechi cried. The villagers watched in silence, wondering why Nkechi stayed so calm despite the abuse. 5 days later, Ogechi cooked a big pot of rice and chicken stew. To everyone's surprise, she gave the largest portion to Nkechi. "Is this for me?" Nkechi asked, confused. Ogechi smiled slyly. "Yes, of course. Take it and enjoy." Chichi and Chineye were surprised by their mother's action, and they asked her, "Mother, what was that about?" Ogechi whispered, "I added a substance to the food. She will eat, sleep, and never wake up." Nkechi was still in shock. She took the food and decided to go to the poultry shop instead of eating there. She placed the food on the bench and began tending to the birds, giving them water and food. As she was busy, a large turkey came out of the poultry pen and climbed the bench. The turkey pecked at the nylon covering the food, and within seconds, the food spilled everywhere. Nkechi, devastated, chased after the turkey, but before she could catch it, the food was gone. Nkechi was frustrated. She picked some mangoes from the backyard and had them for lunch. 10 minutes later, she realized that the turkey which had eaten the food had suddenly grown weak and was lying on the ground, sleepy and unresponsive. She watched in amazement as the turkey fell into a deep sleep. Nkechi was surprised. She felt that perhaps the turkey bird was sick. That evening, when she returned home and told her aunt about the turkey, Ogechi became furious. "Why did you unalive the turkey?" she screamed, beating her again. But deep down, Ogechi and her daughters began to fear Nkechi. They began to believe that she might be cursed, and something supernatural had protected her from their evil plans. The next morning, as Nkechi swept the compound and went to fetch water from the stream, a car honked near her. A tall, handsome young man, Eric, waved and asked if she needed a ride. "No, sir, I'm fine," Nkechi said politely. But Eric insisted, "Let me at least drop you off at your compound. I'm new to the village." As she hesitated, Eric introduced himself. "I'm Eric from the city. At least tell me your name." He asked, "My name is Nkechi, thank you, but I'll manage." She walked away, not realizing that Eric was still watching her. He drove ahead and stopped at her compound. When Ogechi came out, she smiled and greeted him. "Who are you, sir? And how may I help you?" Eric looked at her and said, "I think I like your daughter, Nkechi. I want to marry her, if you will allow me." "I'm sorry for not properly introducing myself, ma'am. I'm Eric. I am new to this village." Ogechi, angered by the mention of Nkechi, immediately responded, "That dirty girl. She is cursed. She will never make a good wife. She is mentally unstable." Eric believed her lies. He quickly said, "No wonder she looks dirty. Thank you for your time." He turned to leave, but Ogechi quickly called her daughters, Chichi and Chinenye. The girls came outside and greeted Eric. Immediately, Eric fell in love with Chichi. The following days were filled with gossip as the news spread that Eric, a wealthy man from the city, had come to marry Chichi. 1 week later, the traditional marriage took place and Ogechi was overjoyed. She had arranged for her daughter to marry Eric, who seemed to have money and status. On the day of the wedding, Nkechi went to wish her cousin a happy married life. "You are dirty, worthless girl. Don't ever try to congratulate me again." Nkechi felt a sharp pain in her heart, but she left quietly, wishing them well in silence. After the wedding, Chichi moved in with Eric to the city, expecting luxury and a life of ease. But she was shocked when they arrived at a small, busy neighborhood, filled with noise and chaos. Eric, it turned out he was a street tout who had borrowed money for their wedding and rented a car just to impress her. His home was a small one-room apartment with only a mat on the floor and a few clothes hanging on a rope. Chichi wept bitterly as the reality of her new life set in. Eric confessed that he had sold his TV and other belongings to gather money for their marriage. As weeks turned to months, Chichi grew increasingly unhappy. She couldn't conceive, and Eric's drunkenness and late-night comments and goings made things worse. One night, they had a violent argument, and both were left unconscious, beaten and bruised. They were rushed to the hospital by concerned neighbors. When their family found out, Ogechi was deeply ashamed, but Chichi felt the full weight of her mistakes. 3 years later, Chinenye ran away from home, telling her mother not to look for her. Meanwhile, Nkechi continued to endure her aunt's cruelty. Then one day, as she was returning from the farm, she met a stranger named Emeka. He had been watching her for some time and had fallen in love with her. "I want to marry you and take you away from your aunt," he said. Emeka was poor but kind-hearted, and he had a small tricycle business. Despite having little to offer, Emeka's love touched Nkechi's heart. She agreed to marry him, hoping for a peaceful life and someone who could treat her right. Ogechi, not realizing Emeka's true nature, quickly agreed, and within 3 days, they had a small traditional wedding. Nkechi left her aunt's house, riding away in the tricycle with Emeka. To her surprise, Emeka took her to a luxurious home in the city, where he owned a successful tricycle company and an electrical appliances shop. Nkechi was overwhelmed with joy. "How did you afford all this?" she asked. Emeka smiled and said, "I've been working hard, and I want to give you everything you deserve." As for Chichi, she was arrested for stealing a huge sum of money from a market woman's purse, and she was arrested. Chinenye returned to her mother with a baby girl. She birthed when she was away. She dropped the child for her mother and left the house again. Ogechi became sick and weak. She remembered how she struggled to give them a good life with the poultry farm she had. Now she's not getting any benefits from them. They only brought shame and disgrace to her name and every other bad news. 8 months later, Nkechi visited her aunt, offering her money to help with her health. Ogechi, filled with guilt, apologized for all the pain she had caused. And finally, Nkechi's tears, once filled with sorrows, were now tears of joy, for she had found love and peace after a life of suffering. Ogechi, though regretful, learned that kindness and forgiveness would always lead to a better life.